Welcome to Season 4, Episode 4 of the Not Your Mama's Autism podcast. I'm Lola Dada Ali. In this episode, in the spirit of the recent observance of Valentine's Day, I speak to a relationship coach who is focused on a population not typically served by his industry. Have you ever seen the Netflix show Love on the Spectrum? It is a show that chronicles the ups and downs of the dating world of autistic adults. Dating and relationships are a complicated part of the human experience, but for some, emphasis on some and not all on the autism spectrum, things like social cues and other nonverbal forms of communication can make some types of connection quite challenging. Jeremy Hamburgh is a relationship coach who is focused on a particular niche that is not often explicitly marketed to, and that would be adults on the autism spectrum. He is the founder of My Best Social Life, a company with the mission to help autistic adults who are in need of improving the quality of their friendships and romantic relationships. He says that he is the world's first relationship coach devoted to this space, and he recently sat down with me to explain how he found his current profession, how his past career as an attorney helps him in his current work, and how he counsels his clients toward deeper connection with others. So, with that in mind, let's get started. Jeremy, thank you. Welcome to the Not Your Mama's Autism podcast. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's get into this. I mean, your labels have labels: lawyer, litigator, relationship coach. If you can encapsulate what you do in a 1-minute elevator pitch, how would you describe yourself?
You know, it's funny that you use the word elevator pitch because I moved from New York City to Southern California so that I could ease out of being a litigator and ease into being a full-time coach. So I actually live in a place with no elevators. I literally can't remember the last elevator ride that I took. And so I'll just say this, I'm the first dating and friendship coach in America who focuses exclusively on training adults with autism how to meet new people and make good friends and land exciting dates and turn them into a fulfilling relationship. And I do it with sensitivity and compassion. And I get great results for my clients because I spend every day perfecting the quickest and most direct route out of loneliness and into a real social life. And that's what my clients want, and that's what my clients deserve. And, I don't think of that so much as an elevator pitch as I think of it as my mission statement. It's what I think about when I wake up, and it's what I think about when I go to bed. And so, that's sort of how I define myself now.
The name of your company is My Best Social Life. So you explained that you are a relationship coach, and this is beyond just a business. This is a mission. Explain to our audience, because to some people, social life may mean slightly different things to different people, but explain to our audience what My Best Social Life is.
It's my baby. It's my heart-centered business. Through My Best Social Life, I use a variety of different ways to help people on the autism spectrum live the social lives that they've always wanted. And I also help families too, mostly parents, sometimes siblings. So for example, my website is mybestsociallife.com. And really the only thing that we offer there is a free training for singles on the spectrum called the 5-step strategy that our clients with autism use to land exciting dates and find love, and also a free training for parents. And I once had a guy from Orlando, Florida, who said it changed his perspective so much that, he kept on trying to pay me for it. But it's a labor of love that I do for this community. My Best Social Life hosts a free online community on Facebook for singles. I just renamed it the Ultimate Autism Guide to Dating and Friendship. And it's a place where singles with autism can meet others or ask questions or just feel a sense of belonging, because that's so important. And we're going to be doing some free trainings in that group as well. My Best Social Life hosts a free online community for parents too on Facebook. That one's called the Autism Parents Guide to Social Success. And what I found is that parents have loved meeting others who are on the same journey as them. And we're going to do some free trainings for the parents in that group too. And I think maybe the most important thing is that My Best Social Life offers a no-cost strategy session for any autism family that has a son or daughter who wants to make friends or start dating or have a girlfriend or boyfriend. It's a family call. It's usually two parents and their son or daughter on the spectrum, and it's no cost. And we spend 90 minutes diving deep into what their child's dream social life is and what's keeping them from having it, and what a step-by-step solution looks like. And most of the time, by the end of this session, everyone on the call is just crystal clear on what the problem is and what the solution is. And at the end of it, some people want to work with me, which is great, and some people don't, and that's fine too. We part ways as friends, but at the end of the day, that's what My Best Social Life is. It's a way for me to show people with autism and their families the path out of loneliness and into the life that people with autism really want.
How did all this come to be? Do you have a personal connection to the autism community?
Everyone asks me that. They ask me, do you have a child with autism? Do you have a sibling with autism? And people are kind of shocked to hear that I don't. I have an autistic cousin, but he isn't the reason I made this my life's work. My Best Social Life came into being because the autism community invited me in. They came to me and they embraced me and my approach. Back in 2010, I was just a regular dating coach helping, neurotypicals find love. And I had this, amazing arrangement with the JCC in Manhattan, the Jewish Community Center in Manhattan, where I'd give a workshop on the science of attraction to men on Mondays and to women on Tuesdays. And then on Thursdays, I would rent out the basement of a bar on 86th Street called The Parlor. And all the men and women from my workshop would meet one another and we would practice the techniques that I taught them. And well, little did I know it, a lot of people who attended my workshop were autistic. And I later understood why. The JCC Manhattan had 3 special needs groups operating under its roof. So, the first, the late Myrna Zinn of a group called Match Connection invited me to give a workshop to her group. And then a wonderful woman named Steffi Falls of a group called Boost invited me to give a workshop to her group, which were somewhat older adults. And then, the one and only force of nature, Allison Kleinman of the Adaptations Program, invited me to give a workshop to her group. And I ended up leading their dating program for over, something like 3 years. And, truthfully, looking back on those first few years, the autism community definitely taught me more than I taught them. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that the autism community embraced me while I was learning about autism myself. But I think the marriage was made in heaven, because on one side were people with autism who wanted to have friends and settle down with someone special, but they were struggling to connect with people. And nobody really knew what to do about it. And on the other side was me, because when I see a problem, I say, bring it on. The harder the problem, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So that was over a decade ago. That was back, like in 2010. And as I said, I spent every day since then perfecting my strategies so that people with autism can live social lives that they really want.
You mentioned perfecting your strategy. What type of research did you do to become better acquainted with this community?
I dove into the community. I spent time with Match Connection and Boost, and especially with adaptations, because I think that reading from books is important, but you really don't get to learn what the community is like, or what people are like, or what they're struggling with, or what they want until you talk with them. And so I made it my mission to talk with as many of them as possible and interact with as many people as possible so that I can learn from real people what they really want and what they're really struggling with. And it's been an ongoing process. I learn more and more about people with autism, about the autism community every day, because every day I'm spending time in my free online community for singles, my free online community for parents. I'm doing strategy sessions with families, and every day I learn more and more about what my clients and what my community wants.
I was able to check out one of your initial trainings you have for autistic adults, and you mentioned in your training about how being a former trial lawyer aids you in the work you do today. Can you walk us through a specific example?
It's funny. Anytime I tell someone I stop being, a lawyer, a litigator, so that I can be an autism dating and friendship coach, their first reaction is like, whoa, like that is so different. What a drastic career change. And, from my perspective, it isn't. I remember when I was a young 24-year-old, baby-faced prosecutor fresh out of law school. And one of the first things you do when you're a young prosecutor is you go through trial training. And, what are the two most important skills that they teach you in trial training? Number one, project confidence. And number two, tell a good story. And, well, guess what? Those happen to be the two most important skills for landing a date: project confidence and tell a good story. So when I was giving workshops at the JCC Manhattan about the science of attraction, the techniques I focused on were centered around projecting confidence and telling a good story, because that's what I knew. And a decade plus later, I'm still teaching how to project confidence and tell a good story, except I'm not teaching it to young prosecutors or neurotypicals, but certainly not young prosecutors who want to persuade a jury. I'm teaching it to adults with autism who want to attract a partner, and I'm doing it in a way that's relevant to them and useful to them and meaningful.
Now, that is taking one skill set and transferring it to any industry. When they tell you go to law school, it's flexible. They may not have been thinking about this example, but this is a great example.
I don't think anyone thought of this example.
What is the percentage breakdown of your clientele by gender, roughly?
Over the years, it's been pretty consistent in terms of my clients. I would say around like 4 men to every woman. And the sexual preferences of my clients are also on their own spectrum. I have straight clients, I have gay clients, bisexual. So on those levels, I would say that my clientele has really been a mirror of the autism community as a whole.
What challenges do you face when you're trying to convince a potential client to put themselves out there when it comes to dating?
So the thing is, I don't try to convince people that they should try dating. I've had plenty of parents over the years come to me and ask me to convince their child to be social, or to make friends, or to dip their toe into the dating pool. I had one last week, as a matter of fact. And as a parent myself, I can completely, appreciate where that ask comes from. But what I found is that the desire to be social, to have a girlfriend, to have a boyfriend, that desire, it comes from within. And when you think about it, convincing someone to try is not going to work, because learning a social strategy takes energy. It takes practice. Building your confidence takes energy. And that energy really has to come from within. It has to come from, this real internal desire to live a better life. And, an incredible example, anyone who has taken my training has met Douglas. Douglas came to me when he was just shy of 40 years old. He'd never been on a date. He'd never had a kiss, never even held hands with a woman in his life. But he came to me with this like really big goal of getting married. And I bring Douglas up because we've been chatting the last few days, he and I. He and his fairly new wife just got back from their honeymoon, and he was sharing photos with me. And every time I talk with him, I think about the razor thin margin between success and failure. Douglas is a success because he had a dream life in his mind, and he was genuinely committed to realizing that dream life, and he put in the effort to make it real. And now he's married to a wonderful young woman, and I had the really distinct honor of delivering a blessing to him and his bride under their marital canopy. But I didn't need to convince him, right? I didn't need to convince him to do it. That desire was within him, and that's why he came to me, and that desire powered him through. At the end of the day, I think that human connection is a basic human need. Most humans are born with that innate craving to connect with other people. And that goes for people with autism too. And sometimes that craving for connection just gets buried, under the pain of years and sometimes decades of rejection. And I can appreciate that. But as long as there's a kernel of that craving for human connection inside of someone, I believe that I can draw it out of them. When people see that there's a direct route out of loneliness and into a vibrant social life, and they believe that there's a strategy that will work for them too, and they see that light at the end of the tunnel, it allows them to reconnect to that craving for attention and connection that I think is just so basic to humanity.
You mentioned the importance of visualizing that first step to your clients, whatever social life related goal they have. So how do you go about helping your clients to visualize in the first place? With Douglas, it seems like he already had the goal in mind. But for those clients that know they want it, but maybe not sure how to go about getting to that first step, how do you go about helping them?
I start from a very basic premise. And the premise is we can't achieve anything if we don't know what we want to achieve. And that goes for everything in life, right? Not just our social life. Do you want a social life? Great. But like we start from the basic premise of, what do you want it to be? Because the thing about humans is that we are pretty darn good at getting what we want when we have clarity on what that is. So the question is ultimately, how do you get clarity on what you want? And the way that we do it is we actually work backwards. We work backwards from what your ultimate goal is. So let's say that, I don't know, let's say that you're a guy who wants to have a girlfriend. Okay, great. So close your eyes and picture your girlfriend and do it in great detail. What does her hair look like? What color are her eyes? How tall is she? What is she wearing? Now that you have like a deep visual of what your girlfriend looks like, then I want you to call it a specific scene in a movie of what your relationship looks like together. So, where are the two of you in that scene? Are you apple picking? I don't know, it's fall. Are you pumpkin picking? Are you having lunch at the local diner? Are you on the couch together? And what are you doing together, right? Are you walking together? Are you holding hands? Are you giggling about something silly? And I really encourage people to play that scene out in incredible detail, like you're Ron Howard or Steven Spielberg or someone like that, because you want it to feel real. You want to be so deep into that scene that you can almost like smell your girlfriend's perfume. And it's super powerful to do that visualization because it gives you an immense amount of clarity on what you're striving for and what you really want your life to look like. And you can do the same thing with visualizing how you won her over. Set the stage. Did you meet her at the supermarket? Was it the department store? Was it the bakery? It's your movie, so it's your choice. And you close your eyes and you visualize in depth the way that you walked up to her, and you visualize what you said to her and what jokes you told and the questions that you asked and what she said back to you and how you asked her out. And you make that into a movie in your head, and you play that movie in your head so often and so deeply that it actually like feels real to you. And the reason why is because research actually shows that deep visualization is the equivalent of actual practice. And that sounds kind of like nuts, but like visualizing something in your mind actually creates muscle memory, even though no actual muscles were used. And I just think that is so cool.
I didn't realize that level of specificity you advise in your clients.
Mm-hmm.
So with Douglas, let's say, his or clients like Douglas, you had this level of, you advised on this level of deep visualization. So when now a real life encounter comes, what you're saying that because they practiced in their mind so often, it's given them a greater chance at success.
The best athletes in the world don't just practice on the basketball court or the baseball diamond or whatever. The very best athletes in the world, from Michael Jordan to Kobe to whoever, they practice in their mind because it creates muscle memory. The thing that we have found is that if you can visualize it, you can make it happen. And if you can't visualize it, it might be out of reach. But if you can visualize anything, if you can visualize yourself doing it, that means it's just a matter of practice to get there.
When you go to your website on this visualization theme, there's a two-track training model. There's one for autistic adults and then another track for their parents.
Yeah.
Is the goal of the parent training, is visualization also tied to them as well? Or why is there a two-track system?
It's interesting that you call it a two-track system. And I say that because when I think about what I do, I don't think about helping singles separately and helping parents separately. I think about helping families as a whole, and I think about solving problems as a team. But here's something that you probably don't think about unless you have my job, which is to serve people. I don't get to serve anybody, any family, unless someone in that family finds me and thinks that I am the answer to their prayers. And so sometimes the person who finds me is a person with autism, right? I've met many people on the autism spectrum who are incredible self-advocates, and they go out and they search for answers for their loneliness. And sometimes they find me, whether it's my free training or my free Facebook group or my website or whatever, but they find me and they like my approach, and they schedule, a strategy session, and they bring in their parents, and we talk about the strategy for becoming, a social success together. And sometimes the person who finds me is a mom or a dad, because it would mean the world to them for their son or daughter to have great new friends or go on exciting dates or have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So moms and dads do an incredible amount of research to find answers to what is vexing their child. And they find me, and they like my approach, not just for their sons or daughters, but for themselves, including that visualization, including visualizing, what that life is that they want for themselves and for their son or daughter. And they schedule a strategy session, and we sit down as a family, to think and plan. all jokes aside, would my career be easier if I just, had to create content for people with autism and, didn't create content for their parents too? Yeah, it would be, my career would be much easier. I do twice the work so that, both people with autism and their parents have resources that they can turn to. But, that's my calling. I do twice the work and I do it from a place of love. And I do it because I know that people with autism want a solution and they want to feel included and they want a light at the end of the tunnel. And their parents do too.
You encourage your clients to list character traits that maybe society would view as quirks and figure out how to use them as an advantage in this dating space. Tell us how you developed this strategy.
It was personal to me because I'm a quirky guy. And when when I was single, I needed to find a strategy that worked for me, or else I was going to be the single one for a heck of a long time. I look back on when I was younger, and while my peers were going clubbing, I was on the debate team. I was a huge nerd, and while my peers were, having house parties and getting drunk, I was on the roof of my parents' house talking philosophy, with a couple of close buddies of mine. And when other people were waking up from their hangovers, I was reading the New York Times, on paper, folded, folded like a real New Yorker, the nerdy way. I wasn't cool, and I was never going to be cool, and I was never going to pretend to be cool. And so I had to decide whether I was going to, mope around and be frustrated that I wasn't attracting women, or whether I was going to take my nerdiness and make it into a selling point for me, into an advantage. And obviously, I committed to doing the latter because, here's the thing that I learned. Nerdiness is not good or bad, right? It's what you make of it. And that goes for a whole lot of other character traits too. They're not good or bad. They're what you make of it. So, what I encourage people to do is sit down and figure out what are your traits? Ask yourself that. What are your traits? Ask other people what your traits are. Ask your parents, ask your siblings. Get a list of your traits and your characteristics together. And just be honest with yourself and allow others to be honest with you. This isn't about praise or criticism. It's about understanding who you are and how others view you, how others perceive you. And then take that list, pick a couple of those traits or characteristics or whatever, and ask yourself, what can be good about it? What can be good about that trait? How can I make it into a positive? How can I turn it into an advantage? What I realized, as I said before, is that most characteristics aren't inherently good or inherently bad. Most personality traits just exist. Nerdiness just exists. And it's what you do with it that counts. So let's talk about something that's really identified with the autism community. Okay. So the ability to look at a screen for 10 straight hours, right? The computer screen, the telephone screen. I've had parents tell me that their kids will look at a screen for 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know what? And I know parents are gonna hate me for this, but that ability to look at the screen for 10 hours a day isn't inherently good or bad, believe it or not. Okay. It's pretty bad when that 10 straight hours of screen time, is playing video games or watching YouTube videos. But, did you know, for example, that stores will pay you to watch a screen for 10 hours straight and identify patterns or look out for things that might be theft or fraud? Department stores, chain restaurants, heck, even casinos, it doesn't matter, right? There is value to them in sitting behind a screen for 10 hours and looking out for things that are damaging their business. I personally can't watch a screen for 10 hours, but if you can, We can turn that into an advantage. We can turn that into a job. And almost any trait or tendency or characteristic can also be turned into an advantage, kind of like that.
It's not just parents that would come after you. Some pediatricians would as well. But I do get your point. I do get your point. I do get your point. Along those lines, actually, a characteristic assigned to some within the autism community is that of scripting. And you advise autistic adults who script to turn scripting again into an advantage by scripting in such a way that they could ask and say something ahead of time, try and figure out scenarios ahead of time, what they can say so that they could spark a great conversation when that time presents itself. So, have you ever had a client surprised by you advising them in this way?
They're grateful for it. Full stop. Full stop. Grateful. I've had strategy sessions with about 100 families in the last, let's call it, year or so. And when we do a family session, or strategy session, as I said before, like we dive really deep into exactly what's not working so that we can get complete clarity on what the solution would be. So, 100 single people with autism on the phone with me in the last year or so. And, take a guess how many of them were, struck by, this fear or this anxiety of not knowing what to say, or this fear or anxiety about saying something wrong. Like out of 100, how many do you think, Lola?
120.
Yeah, 120, exactly. Every single person with autism that I speak with has no plan for what to say to start a conversation, what to ask to keep the conversation going, or how to turn a conversation into a friendship or something more. And then they can't visualize what it looks like to actually have a wonderful conversation and win someone over. And that leads to another massive, massive problem that I see on 120 out of 100 calls, which is that people lack confidence in themselves and in their ability. And you know what? They're linked. They're linked. As I have my own coach, I believe in coaching. I have my own team of coaches that coach me. And what they tell me is when you don't have a plan to succeed, you are planning to fail. When you don't have a plan for victory, you're planning to lose. What people want is a plan. They want to know what to say. They want to know what to ask. And they want to know that what they're doing is right. Okay. And a big problem that people, come up against is that there's actually like too much information out there. There's too much. You can watch like a bajillion YouTube videos on dating, and you'll get a bajillion different opinions about what to say and what to ask. And you can read, 10 different books about dating, and again, have 10 different opinions about, what to say and what to ask. And the question like people come to me with is like, which one's right? And which one is going to make me look silly? And not knowing that is a huge problem because it paralyzes you. If you don't know what's good advice and what's bad advice, and you don't know how to take the good advice and stick it into a plan that you can use, you're paralyzed. It's why people stay stuck. So I make it easy for people. I work with them on exactly what to say and exactly what to ask, and exactly how to build that human connection. And it's not a surprise to them. It's what they know that they need, and it's what they want to do. Because at the end of the day, they want to be able to close their eyes and visualize what it's like to win someone over and then go out there and do it.
In your training, you allude to online dating sites perhaps not being the best venues for autistic adults. Is that safe to say? Why do you think that?
Lola, there's literally not enough time in my day or in your podcast to count all the different ways why online dating sucks. for people with autism. Sucks, by the way, is the technical term for
I
it.
can tell. I can tell. I can tell. That's
But I mean that literally. I actually had to break it down into a 3-part video series in my online parents community on Facebook about why online dating just generally does not work for people with autism. And here's what it comes down to: online dating is a huge tease, right? You go back, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, I don't even know at this point, to when online dating started. And it held this like beautiful prospect of giving a single adult with autism access to millions of other single people without having to go to a bar, without having to go to a club, without having to physically walk up to someone, without having to worry about eye contact and body language and all that stuff. It really created this like hope in the autism community of circumventing all the social challenges that make dating so hard for people on the spectrum. And what they found is it didn't. And not only that, online dating is actually harder for people with autism. And there are a couple of reasons for that. There is a thick, thick layer of unwritten rules that go along with succeeding at online dating. And if you manage to figure out those unwritten rules and you do land a date, good for you. But guess what? You still need to have that in-person date. You still need those in-person social skills to make the date go well and turn it into a second date. And so in reality, online dating actually doubled the number of unwritten rules and doubled the number of social skills that people with autism needed to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And think about this for a second. When you are on a site with 100,000 people, with 1 million people, whatever, you need to make a good impression, right? You need to stand out. And that requires a lot of things to go right. You need to pick the right cover photo. You need to pick the right secondary photos. You need to write an attractive profile. You need to message people who are actually going to write you back, and you need to message them in a way that works, right? And that's before you even get a single response. And that's before you turn that response into a real world meeting. And that's before you turn that real world meeting into a relationship. So what you want to know how to land a date and how to have a girlfriend? It's simple. Know who you want to meet, go to the places where the right people gather, know what to say to them to create a connection, and then nurture that connection into a relationship. Anything other than that is a circuitous path, and it's more work than necessary. And online dating is like twice as much work as is necessary.
based on your length of time in the field. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have that you've personally observed of autistic adults in the area of dating?
Far and away, Lola, number one answer: that people with autism aren't capable of dating and loving and relating, or that they don't want to. Far and away, bar none. I think that there is still a huge misconception that people with autism are like robots. They have no affect, they have no emotions, they have no ability to connect, and it's a real problem. Okay, that lack of understanding and that misperception of autism in the neurotypical world is a real problem, and it's why the news is like a buzz when a celebrity like Amy Schumer, for example, marries a guy with autism. People read that and their mind it explodes, like, whoa, how is she making that work? And the fact of the matter is, we cannot rely on other people. We cannot rely on the neurotypical world to educate themselves about autism. Okay. It would be nice if they did, but we can't rely on that. So the answer to the problem lies inside the person with autism. To have the right strategy to meet people, to put in the effort, to present the best version of themselves, and to be resilient, to work on it until they have the life they want. Because misconceptions about autism will always, always be there. And the plan cannot be to wait for those misconceptions to evaporate.
In an ideal world, the neurotypicals would spend more time educating themselves, though. It's a huge
Yeah.
burden to put on any marginalized group for them to be the only teachers of how things ideally should be. But for that is one day at a time, really and truly.
But
Uh,
here's the thing, Lola. Like I consider myself a very open-minded person. I consider myself to be very educated, and I didn't know about autism.
mhm.
And what I knew about autism was from a cousin who, who just is not representative necessarily of the autism community and certainly not representative of my clients.
How
It
so?
what?
You said he's not
he
representative.
lives he lives in a group home. He's gonna have help from now until the day he dies. He's a beautiful, beautiful soul. And so he's not the people that I work with. And that was my understanding of autism for the longest time. And the truth is, Lola, if the autism community hadn't invited me in, I wouldn't know very much about what the spectrum of autism looks like. I have the blessing of having been invited in, and I've had the blessing of people with autism teaching me what it's like and what the community is all about. But I've been doing this for over a decade and I'm still learning. I'm still learning. And so it would be, and you know what? I've been having conversations with my mom just the last couple of days, including yesterday. My mom just started watching Love on the Spectrum on Netflix. She's watching it and she's like, "Oh my God, Jeremy, like you have been a dating coach for autistic people for like over a decade and I didn't understand why you do what you do. I didn't understand why you specialize and why this is so needed. I get it now. This is my mom. I've been doing this for a decade. And I love the fact that she's getting the education now. And I love the fact that like millions of people are watching, Autism on the Spectrum and other shows like that and getting this education. But there's still, 8 billion people in the world who don't have this education. And it's not for lack of desire. It's just not on their radar. And so, I always bring it back to this. If we want to live the life that we're meant to live, we have to create it ourselves. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is. So we can't wait for the good people of the world to become educated. We have to go out there and bring our light to them. We have to go out there and bring our goodness to them. We have to go out there and educate them. And if we want them to be receptive, we have to do it in a way that is meaningful to them. And that's where the visualization comes in. That's where the knowing what to say and what to ask comes in. And the benefit is we get the life that we want. And I talk about that a lot too, Lola. Socializing isn't just about you, right? It's not just me, and what I want. Socializing is about bringing goodness to a world that right now is scary as hell. People are lonely, people are isolated, they feel marginalized, they're scared, right? And the answer to that is human connection. And so when you create the strategy to build genuine human connection and you go out there and you actually do it, it's actually a form of social justice. And I mean that. If you don't build a strategy and go out there into the world and give your light and give your goodness, you're holding something into yourself and you're not giving it as a gift to others. It is literally social justice to visualize your success and go out there and do it, because you will actually help other people who are waiting for you. and need your light, but they can't have it because you're sitting at home, because you're afraid of rejection, because you don't know what to say. I get really passionate about that. Socializing is social justice, but it is. You don't know who's depressed. You don't know who's one day away from taking their own life. You just don't know. You don't know if you're saving a life by going out there and having a real conversation with another human being.
You mentioned, despite doing this for a decade, that your mom, now that she actually saw it on the screen, saw these same scenarios that perhaps you had explained to her before, but actually her seeing it depicted, real life depictions through Love on the Spectrum. I wanted to get your take, especially based on what you just said. What is your view on Love on the Spectrum when you first saw it? I'm assuming you've seen it.
I haven't started season 2 yet, but yes, I saw season 1, of course. What was my thought? This is why I do what I do. This is why I do what I do. I was glad that millions of people get to see the desire that people with autism have to make connections, to meet new people, to make friends, to have love. I was really glad that the world got to see it. And I was really glad that the world also got to see how much of a struggle it is for them. It's just, as a neurotypical, I've been on great dates, I've been on terrible dates. I think, most people in the neurotypical world have been on terrible dates in their life. What?
Amen, amen.
Amen,
Amen,
amen.
amen.
But you brush them off. You brush them off, and you go on another one, and you go on another one, and you go on another one until you have a good one. It's much, much harder for people on the spectrum to do that. And Love on the Spectrum really drove that home. There's a desire, but there's a gap between what they want and what they're able to achieve. And so how do we bridge that gap between the desire and the goal? And it all comes back to exactly like what I teach in my free training, right? There are 5 steps to get there, including visualization, including know what to ask and know what to say. And that's how we bridge the gap, right? We know in our minds what we want, and then we work backwards for how to get there. But it's a beautiful show, and I've heard nothing but love come out of that show. People come out of watching this show and their mind is blown, and they come to me and they say, Jeremy, now I get why you do what you do. But I love to be in alignment with how I think the world should be. I love that I can wake up every day and do a job that nudges the world in the right direction.
So, of all the things we've discussed today, is there a part of your work that's the most rewarding, or is that like choosing amongst children?
No, it's not like choosing amongst children. I see my clients succeed in ways that they have always wanted, but have never thought possible. And, the way it changes their life, the way it changes their parents' life, their siblings' lives, that's everything to me. It's what inspired me, to leave my lawyer job and work in the autism community instead. And we've talked about Douglas a whole bunch of times. And, not only did Douglas and I celebrate his first kiss, his first relationship, his first everything, but as I said, I was there to recite a blessing to him and his bride at his wedding under their marital canopy. And I literally looked out at this social hall, at this wedding venue, whatever you want to call it. And there are a couple hundred guests there. And I thought, why am I doing anything in my life besides this? So now I'm not doing anything in my life besides this, right? I'm dedicated from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, helping autistic people live the social lives that they want and escape loneliness and experience this joy, because it's moments like that, and I want more moments like that. I had a moment a few months ago when I was on the phone with a client and his family, just because for because I don't, like to divulge people's names, I'll call him Jay, okay? And we were talking about the fact that not only, did he ace his job interview while he was in the program with me, and he landed a job, but a few days before, I was on the phone with him and his family, like they were having that like job orientation, and he actually volunteered to lead a group activity at his job orientation. And his mom cried. Like I could hear it through the phone. His mom cried. Like that is everything. I hold people's hand out of like this prison that they're in. Like this, like a young lady I was talking to a couple of days ago said, like, I feel like I'm behind bars. It's a prison of loneliness. And I hold people's hand and I guide them into a life that is, vibrant and joyous. And that's life-changing for them. And when I change their life, that's everything to me, right? That is, you asked what's the most rewarding part, like having a life where I change the course of families.
Jeremy, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you. How can people reach you who want to learn more about what you do?
I think the easiest way is my website, mybestsociallife.com. One word. There is a bit about who I am. There is the free training for young adults on the 5 steps to landing dates and friends and the girlfriend or boyfriend. There's a free training for parents on how to help their autistic son or daughter apply those 5 steps to their own life. And I have the 2 free Facebook communities where people can come and also get some free training and feel a sense of community. So for young adults, it's called The Ultimate Guide to Dating and Friendship. So you go onto Facebook, you go to like the groups page and you do a search for The Ultimate Guide to Dating and Friendship. And for parents, it's the Autism Parents Guide to Creating a Social Life, or something like that. The name is something like that. And again, like it's a community of parents who are on the same journey, and we're going to do some free trainings, and that's how you connect with me. And then, once you're in the group, you can reach out to me on Facebook. You can message me. You can friend me. Or the real big step that really makes a difference is sign your family up for a strategy call. It's usually the son or daughter on the spectrum, and 2 parents or 1 parent and his or her spouse or significant other, and we'll get on the phone for 90 minutes, and it's no cost, and we'll get real clarity on what you want and what's keeping you from having it and what the strategy is. So for people who just want to dive directly into let's do this thing, let's figure out what's wrong and how to solve it, it's mybestsociallife.com/apply. mybestsociallife.com/apply. And you just pick a time that works for you and your family. And I will call you on time because I'm extremely punctual. That's the German side of me. And we'll talk for 90 minutes. And at the end of it, I'll tell you what resources I think can help you. And maybe that's me, maybe it's someone else. And you can decide if you want to work with me. If you do, great. If you don't, great. But, it's my gift to every autism family.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please share and subscribe. If you're interested in the genesis of this podcast, particularly the reason why this podcast came to be, check out season 1 in its entirety. I've also decided to share parts of our story in written form through a column titled The Caregivers Chronicles. If you're interested, you could check it out at psychcentral.com. That's psychcentral, all one word, .com, a division of Healthline Media. You can also follow us on social media at Not Your Mama's Autism on Instagram and Not Your Mama's Autism on Facebook. See you soon.
Not Your Mama's Autism podcast is hosted and written by my mom, Lila Dada Ali, and it's also co-written and produced by me, Fella Ali. My dad, little sister Alero, and I are all occasional contributors. My dad, Tosin Ali, also helps produce sometimes. Big thanks to my aunt, Wilane Williams Ali, who did our graphic design. See you guys soon.